This is Jay Haynes with the Film Sensei YouTube channel. Today in this video, I have a very special guest, Javert Valbarr with FXhome. Welcome, Javert.
Hey, Jay. Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure. Interestingly, Javert is the only person from FXhome that I have ever personally met.
Yeah, it was great. We had pizza in Washington, D.C. It was a good time.
That's right. I was down there with my family, and we were able to connect together and have lunch, and it was a really fun time. So my son was along for the ride as well. So
yeah.
I know that you have been using HitFilm for a long time, and now you work at FXhome, which is really cool. Tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got started with the product.
So about myself, my name is Javert. I am 22 years old, and I live in Norwich, England, working for FXhome. I started using FXhome products. The first one was HitFilm back in 2011 when it first came out. And I've been making tutorials since that time. At first, it was on my own YouTube channel, and then after a few years, FXhome got me to come over and work for them here in England.
That's awesome. And what exactly is your relationship with FXhome?
I am the visual effects artist. So anytime they need to make something promotional for the product to show what it does, that's my job. I also do the weekly or bi-weekly now tutorials on our YouTube channel so we can teach our users about the software.
Excellent. Well, HitFilm has always been a great product. But since you and I have started using it, it has undergone some major improvements over the years. What would you say is the best improvement you've seen made to HitFilm to this point?
I would say one of the top ones is the threaded rendering. So that was a pretty recent update. But what it did is separated the updating of the UI and the viewer. So you don't have to wait for the viewer to update when you make a change, whether you change a number or a slider or whatever. And when you're deep in a composite with a bunch of layers and effects going on, and you're making these changes, you don't want to have to wait for that to update. So it just makes the software feel a lot smoother and a lot faster to use.
I agree. That was a magnificent improvement for me personally, because sometimes you just accidentally go to the wrong place, and now you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to wait a whole, another 2 minutes until the computer finds where I'm at and updates the whole thing. And now you can just click right out of that. And because
even if you made a mistake, you even when you hit undo, you had to wait for it to actually undo. So it's a welcome change.
I agree. That was one of the best things that they've ever done. So I know that normally FXhome is a relatively tight-lipped company when it comes to updating or talking about upcoming features and improvements planned and things like that. But recently, FXhome has announced several very exciting new improvements that are coming up. Things like the new Foundry camera tracking system, After Effects plugins, Vegas Post, and a redesigned media bin, complementary mobile apps, full support of foreign language, which I just think is really cool. They're just some of the few planned upgrades. What do you think is the most exciting upgrade that's coming in the future of HitFilm?
I think out of those, probably the camera tracker would be my favorite, because most of the stuff that I do is visual effects oriented rather than video editing. So for visual effects artists, to be able to automatically track a scene and not really have to do any work, it's pretty automatic. I was actually using it last week. You put it on the footage, you hit a button, it tracks it, you hit another button, and it creates the scene with the camera and everything, and it just works really well. And it makes it's an essential tool if you want to composite any sort of asset into a live action scene realistically. And to have it built into HitFilm, I think will be a big help for a lot of people.
Oh man, I am really, really excited about that for sure. I assume that it's going to take into account different camera lenses and things like that as well.
Yeah, there is a field. I was reading the instruction manual because I, as the tutorial maker, I have to know how to use it. But there is a field to designate that kind of info. But for the most part, it is drag it on, click a button, and it goes through the footage and it looks at it and it analyzes it and it does it automatically.
Wow, that is really incredible. How cool. So just to get to know you personally a little bit better, let me ask you a few personal questions. Number one, what is your favorite movie and why?
I would say right now my favorite movie is Ready Player One. I know it's quite a departure from the book if you've read that, but I think visually it's the most impressive movie I've ever seen. With what they were able to do with the CGI scenes, I think they're just so finely polished. Everything, like the lighting and the color and just the textures and everything, it looks just so good. Every frame is perfectly polished to an amazing degree.
Yeah, my son and I, we saw a bunch of movies together last year. And after the year was over, around Christmas time, we said, hey, let's sit down and make a list of all the movies that we saw and then rank them, from worst to best. And none of them were bad. So there wasn't really no worst, but we did come out with Ready Player One as the best movie we saw last year.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I quite like it.
I loved it, but I am a huge fan of The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension. And so that helped a lot. And then also I played the Atari 2600 when I was a kid, and Adventure was my game, and I was fully aware of the Easter egg there. And so for me, it was just, it was great experience.
Yeah, the Easter eggs are a big nostalgic part for a lot of people when they read the book or watch the movie.
Yeah, especially for old people like myself. So.
Nah.
What is your favorite television show and why?
For that, I would say Lost. I first watched the first episode. Our TV production teacher back in 9th grade, when I was 14, he showed it to us as sort of an exercise in storytelling, just to expose us to that kind of story. And from that first episode, I was like, I have to go home and watch the rest of this. And I did, and I just loved it. I think it just, the mystery, I think, is what a big part of it is. The idea of finding this island and exploring it and figuring out all the secrets, and then there's the sci-fi elements of time travel and stuff like that. I think it just hits all the notes of things that I really like to see.
Yeah, well, and I don't know if you probably have seen the J.J. Abrams TED Talk about Lost and the magic box. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, might have been a while ago, but yeah, it's and I know a lot of people dislike Lost's unanswered questions, but I think some of it just lets you imagine whatever you want.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. But J.J. Abrams is really, really good at leaving questions, for your imagination to then decide what's going on, and that is exactly what Lost is all about. So, who is your favorite actor and why?
Favorite actor, I would say I have probably one or two, maybe three. I would say right now, Mads Mikkelsen is probably one of my favorites. And I've only seen him in like one thing. He played Hannibal Lecter in the TV show. But he has such like a presence, and he did so well with the part. Benedict Cumberbatch is another one. He has a great voice, and I think he just fits everything he does.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, he is. I'm an old school guy, so my favorite actor is Jimmy Stewart. Cary Grant, John Wayne. Mm-hmm. I'm old school in who I really like. Right. Who's your favorite actress?
The first thing that came to my mind was La La Land. So Emma Stone. I think I've seen her in several things, but I think she just is very charismatic, and she, especially in La La Land, I think she fit the role really well. Nice. Very cool. Yep. I'm old school there too. My favorite actress is Katharine Hepburn. So let's get back to HitFilm. For people who are learning how to use the software, there are a lot of resources out there to go to. In your opinion, besides, of course, the HitFilm YouTube channel and obviously the Film Sensei channel, wink, wink, obviously, what other YouTube channels would you suggest watching? I would say HitFilm University is another one. He goes into really good detail. It's kind of like, because if you compare it to the FXhome tutorials, the FXhome tutorials are typically 6-7 minutes, and I try to make them as concise as possible. But what Mike does is kind of like sitting in a lesson at school, in that it's a live demonstration of the features, and he really takes you through every single aspect of the subject that he's talking about. Other than that, I would probably say Film Riot for filmmaking tips in general, and then Video Copilot for techniques, because even though he does After Effects tutorials, a lot of it transfers over to HitFilm. Yeah, I agree.
HitFilm University is my go-to.
Yeah.
As far as, if I need to know something about HitFilm, that's the place to go. So
Yeah.
So over the years, FXhome has released several master classes on HitFilm. And for those listening who don't know, what they do is they create an entire short film using HitFilm, and then they release a series of video lessons on how it was done, which are extremely instructional. Some of these are done completely in-house by the team at FXhome, while others are done in cooperation with other content creators, including the folks at Corridor Digital and Freddie Wong, Film Riot, and the Emmy Award-winning team over at Ember Films. With all due respect to Prism and Fracture, my favorite of the FXhome short films is Rebellion. So, Javert, what is your favorite FXhome masterclass film and why?
I'm going to have to agree with you in saying Rebellion. I think that one just captures the feel of Star Wars so well. Everything, like the music and the costume and the story of like two rebels infiltrating a base. I think that one, when it finishes, when I show it to people, I'm like, yeah, we made a Star Wars fan film and it looks just like Star Wars. So I would say Rebellion as well.
Yeah, and the location is just amazing.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, that was really cool. I wish I had been on that shoot, but that was a little bit before my time. But it's still really cool.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing that they got that location because it looks like a Star Wars, real film set.
Yeah, for sure.
And the fact that they had only a handful of, or a couple of guys in, stormtrooper outfits, and yet there are thousands of them in this film is amazing. So it's really a tremendously great film, and I enjoy it. I watch it all the time, just to just because it's so good. So
yeah, and that was made with Ember Films, so they really know what they're doing and how to make things look cool.
Yeah, they really do. HitFilm is really an incredibly powerful software for compositing visual effects. Can you give me some general tips and tricks for people who are interested in using HitFilm in their projects?
Yeah, so these tips are ideally meant for not just anyone doing visual effects, but sort of motion graphics or editing in general. The first is keyboard shortcuts. So I didn't personally use these keyboard shortcuts in HitFilm for a couple years, but once you start getting used to them and start customizing them the way you want to fit your workflow, they can really speed things up. So, something as simple as moving your playhead to the beginning of the timeline, because you're making something, you want to see it over and over again. HitFilm has a lot of keyboard shortcuts to customize, and we're wanting to add more as well. Similar to that, customizing workspaces, so you can move the panels around in HitFilm. You can resize them, you can get rid of them. And I have several workspaces depending on the kind of project I'm working on, whether it's a composite or a color grade. And it just makes things easier to look at, I guess. You know what information you're looking for, you know where to look. And if you place them right, it can also reduce how often you have to move your mouse.
Yeah, totally. Actually, the neat thing about HitFilm is how flexible it is to change both of those things. You can change your keyboard shortcuts if you don't like to hit home to go to the beginning of the timeline, for example. You want to hit something else, you can make it whatever you want. And the idea of changing your layout, your workspace, where the panels are and what panels are there and which ones aren't. I have a whole list of my own personal panels that I've created over the years, and I know exactly which one to use for what I'm doing, and it's really fabulous.
Yeah, it's great. It might feel a bit weird at first to change the default settings, but once you get used to it and once you fit your workflow, then it really works. Like mine, for example, my keyboard shortcuts, I like to keep my left hand on the left side of the keyboard and not have to move it, because I don't want to have to look down at the keyboard to see what key I'm hitting. Right. So that's the way I do it, is my right hand's on the mouse and my left hand stays on the left side of the keyboard.
So you've created your own set of personalized keyboard shortcuts.
Yeah, all for the purpose of just working faster.
Right. But then you have to go back to the normal if you're going to do a tutorial.
Yeah, I do have to reset the layout of HitFilm every time.
Yeah, usually when I do a tutorial, I don't use a lot of keyboard shortcuts unless I'm specifically talking about that keyboard shortcut, just so that it's easier for people to follow along.
Yeah. I usually reset to the compositing workspace for all my tutorials.
Yeah, so do I. As a longtime user of the HitFilm software, I personally am sold on everything that it can do. But if you were talking with someone about HitFilm and you wanted to convince them to check out HitFilm Express for the first time, what would you say to them is the most compelling reason to download and give it a try?
The first thing I would say is that it's free. The second thing isn't actually a feature of the software at all. It's the fact that video editing and visual effects can be considered, I think, another creative outlet. So kind of anything like writing or drawing or painting or cooking, it allows you to be creative and to express yourself. And, some people really like drawing, but they can't cook, or they really like cooking, but they can't paint. It's just another thing to try to express yourself and make changes as you see fit as you create a final project.
I agree, totally. Well, I've purchased every Ultimate and Pro version of HitFilm since HitFilm 2 Ultimate, and FXhome is now on version 12. But for somebody who's currently using HitFilm Express, what would you say is the most compelling reason that a person should upgrade to HitFilm Pro?
I think the fact that you don't have to worry about being left out of anything, and every effect, every tutorial, every feature goes into Pro. It has everything, and it also has a few things that Express can't have. So I think it's a kind of a peace of mind thing, is that you have all of our tools at your disposal. Everything that we've built goes into Pro, and you may not use every single feature, but if you need it, it's there.
Yeah. Well, and let's be honest, Pro has some of the best stuff in it.
Yeah.
So if you want, to the folks out there, if you want to check out HitFilm for yourself, I'm leaving a link to the FXhome website in the description below. You can download your free copy and get started today. Javert, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you or any of the other capable staff members at FXhome, what would be the best way to do that?
I have my own personal Twitter at Inscape Digital. If you have a technical support query, it would be fxhome.com/ask. We have a support ticket system there. And if you want to send us your work or anything like that, it would be fxhome.com/contact. We have a few different links depending on what it is you're trying to reach us for.
Wonderful. Well, Javert, it's been really great, and I want to thank you for getting together with me today.
Awesome. No problem. Thanks very much.
My pleasure. This is Jay Haynes for the Film Sensei YouTube channel. Thank you for listening to this podcast today. If you have any suggestions of anyone else that you would like to see interviewed, please let me know in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Thanks for listening.